This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline, of Phoenix Suns podcast. Very special New Year's episode brought to you by Untuck It. Sam, how are you doing?
Okay. We could only bring ourselves to record after a win. That's why we had to take last week off, just so you guys know. We were waiting for the losing streak to end, and it ended, so now we're back for the new year.
Well, when we postpone podcasts, it usually leads to a win. It took a little longer than it normally did this time, but we did finally get a win. 2019 is ending. The entire decade of the 2010s is ending. The 2020s is about to begin, and we have a lot to talk about. On this episode, we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions by Sam and I for the Phoenix Suns, whether it be for the team as a whole, for players, for James Jones, for Robert Sarver. I'm not sure what yours are, Sam. I know you don't really know what mine are either, so we'll see as we talk through them. And throughout the episode, you're going to hear some special guests who gave us some recordings talking about their favorite moments of 2019 as well. So we got lots of interesting things happening on this episode. And to start out, I think you and I, Sam, should talk about our favorite moment from 2019. Sam, what was your favorite moment from the last year?
My favorite moment from this year, because this year has been tough at times. 19-win season. This year has been up and down this season so far, obviously. But I think it's going to be the signing of Ricky Rubio. And I know that's not like a moment that came in season, but within the scope of the offseason, that just felt like such a huge moment for the Suns. And I can't lie, we're open about this. We've been recording this podcast for a while, so if you go back and listen to our reactions to that free agent signing, you know that Ricky Rubio wasn't our number one choice. There were other guys that Suns fans wanted going into the offseason. A lot of talk about D'Angelo Russell, a lot of talk about Malcolm Brogdon. That was my guy personally. But Rubio was a very good choice for the Suns going forward, and especially compared to a guy that I was terrified of, like Terry Rozier. Rubio has come in and he's stabilized the Suns' offense. He was a huge reason behind their 7-4 start, and I'm really excited to see him get to finally play next to DeAndre Ayton consistently, because he's already near the top of the NBA in assists per game, and I can only imagine what he's about to do with Ayton slotting in at that center position. So Rubio, biggest moment for me.
Yeah, that's a good one, and I think he was both of our number 3 on our list of top 5 free agents. So it's somebody that we targeted and we were hoping to get, and that's a good one. I think mine is also off-season related, and it's stealing Monty Williams from the Lakers. I think that was a pivotal moment for the Phoenix Suns. Now, the book on Monty Williams is yet to be written. I think that this is probably a time in a lot of Phoenix Suns fandom here where maybe they're questioning some of the things that Monty Williams is doing. And I think he's done, overall, a pretty good job. There's some questionable decisions here and there, and I think it's difficult for us as fans to always understand why they're made. But the idea of the Phoenix Suns winning over a coach who the Lakers also coveted is a fascinating thing. I would love for it to be written why Monty Williams chose the Phoenix Suns over the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James, and no Anthony Davis yet, but Anthony Davis was coming. I think everyone kind of knew that was going to happen at some point. So a fascinating thing to happen, and I think something that's really important for the Phoenix Suns for a lot of reasons. He brings stability. He coached in the playoffs. He's a long-time coach in the NBA. He has experience with winning franchises, and Robert Sarver gave him a long contract. I talked about it in the last few weeks, how important it was that somebody has really been given the reins to the Phoenix Suns going forward. So I think that was my favorite moment going forward. I think that the Clippers win at the beginning of this season was pretty cool too. You know, it was important to see the team play like winners and beat a team that is probably the best or second best team in the NBA so far this year. And, that was a fun one as well. Those are our favorite moments. And anything else to add on that, Sam?
Well, you've got me thinking about the Lakers now a little bit, because I'm in complete agreement with what you said about Monty, except I'm just having flashbacks to May with the Lakers organization in complete chaos, the protests happening outside of Staples Center, Austin Sear, that fan that showed up there with a bag of peanuts to watch the destruction that you later interviewed on this very podcast. But then just, flip it 6 months later, it is a little bit unfortunate that despite all of that, the Lakers always do find a way, don't they? They're back at the top of the Western Conference.
Even then, there was no question that a few months into the season, the Lakers were going to have a much better record than the Phoenix Suns. That's why I find the decision so fascinating by Monty Williams. I wonder if it was just the idea of working for that sort of up and down front office of people constantly suing each other for the rights to own the team with the Lakers, or maybe he was scared of the presence of LeBron James. You never coach LeBron James, you kind of work for him. Or maybe it wasn't any of that. Maybe he just really believes in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. It could be something. Or James Jones. James Jones is a pretty convincing guy. He's charming. He probably can sell you on something. So maybe a few years from now, I've talked about it before, we'll get some sort of article written about Monty Williams and why he made that decision, because it's a little confounding, I would say. But I'm happy for it. So I think it was a huge moment for the Suns. Let's get into our resolutions. You ready? All right, I'll start first. My first resolution for the Phoenix Suns in 2020: give Mikal Bridges more minutes. Mikal Bridges, and specifically, I will say, in crunch time, I think Mikal Bridges has earned a spot in the rotation to close games on this team. Now, that could mean playing him with Oubre a little bit more. I did look at some stats with Kelly Oubre and Mikal Bridges on the floor together. I didn't think that there was enough of it to make any sort of decision about it. It's a net positive by like 1.3 or something, not a huge net positive, but it was something that I did like to see, and I think it's hard to judge those minutes, particularly at this point, because they haven't played a lot together, and also Mikal Bridges has played a lot better recently. The thing is about Mikal Bridges is if you look at the box score stats for like his last 5 or last 10 games, which I did do, they don't really jump out at you. He's averaging like 6 points a game in 24 minutes or so for the last 10 games. Not this massive stat sort of explosion by Mikal Bridges, but the advanced stats are off the charts by him. He just affects winning in so many ways. He makes up for, this is I think where he's really important. He makes up for mistakes by Devin Booker on defense, and he makes up for mistakes by Kelly Oubre on defense. Two guys that are prone to ball watching off the ball. Devin Booker famous for it. Kelly Oubre getting worse and worse and worse week by week. Ball watching, letting guys cut behind him, looking for steals, looking for blocks, basically is what he's doing. And Mikal Bridges sees that. He rotates faster than anyone, and when you rotate with the longest arms in the league, it makes a big difference. It can be hard to play him sometimes because his offense is a little bit up and down, so I think that's why he was not getting minutes at the beginning of the season. I don't really fault Monty Williams for that. I think that he had to build his confidence up a little bit, and he did. He found his confidence by cutting off the ball. He found his confidence by catching and driving, and his percentages in that thing that we're not allowed to talk about for a few more days have been relatively good as well.
I'm glad you remember.
It's only a few more days, and then we can talk about, maybe we'll dedicate an entire episode to it. But what do you think? Mikal Bridges, more minutes.
Dude, I love that guy. Come on. Mikal's got the third best net rating on the team. The difference between, when he's on the court versus off the court. He's only behind Ricky Rubio and Elie Okobo, and I know, like, if Elie Okobo is second, maybe that makes you question the stat a little bit, but I think from an impact standpoint, Mikal has been very good. We've talked about his defense at length before, and it's encouraging to see signs of growth from him on offense. I think he is being a little bit more aggressive in the past month. It's not a lot, otherwise it would reflect in the box score, kind of like as you were alluding to. But even in a game like last night against Sacramento, he got, I think, 10 points, maybe 9 or 10 quick points through 2 or 3 quarters just by filling the lane effectively in transition and finding those cutting lanes, which he's been very good at all season, and hitting shots on spot-up opportunities. But defensively, he's just a brilliant defender. There was that game also this past week against Denver where it was Mikal Bridges and Jevon Carter. Because you're right, when you pair Mikal with Devin Booker and some of these other questionable defenders, sometimes things can fall apart. We saw this lineup against Denver where maybe the offense was a little bit challenged, but Jevon Carter and Mikal Bridges together, maybe arguably your 2 best defenders on the entire roster, really had a huge impact in what the Suns were able to do. They were able to play the passing lanes, get out in transition, and create easy scoring opportunities to get themselves back in that game.
Yep, I agree with that. And there was even some interesting minutes with Ricky Rubio, Devin Booker, and Jevon Carter on the floor with Mikal Bridges where it's just an interesting look because Ricky Rubio, Jevon Carter, Mikal Bridges, all plus defenders at their positions. 2 of those guys playing the same position, but you can put Ricky Rubio easily on a shooting guard, and he does relatively well. Then you can hide Devin Booker off the ball a little easier when you have those 3 guys on the floor. Not sustainable against every team, but it's a good look.
What's up, Mike and Sam? Happy holidays to all the Timeline listeners out there. John Bloom from downtown Phoenix right now getting ready for another Suns home game. But I want to share my favorite moment from 2019. It actually happened on the road back on October 30th. I was filling in for the Hall of Famer Al McCoy, calling the action with Tim Kempton when the Suns put an absolute whooping on the Warriors in their brand new Chase Center. And what an amazing place that was. But my memory will absolutely be that 43-14 can of whoop-ass that they opened in the first quarter on Steph Curry and company. A lot of people will remember that game as Steph going down when our favorite Asgardian Aaron Baines fell on him and broke his hand. That will never be the headline for me, though. The Suns were absolutely on fire to open up that game, and what a feeling that was after the Warriors have had so much success. As a guy who grew up in the Bay Area, have parents who still root for that team, that felt really good. I know they let them back in at the end. They won it by 11, but that is my favorite moment of 2019 with the Phoenix Suns. I want to wish everybody out there listening to the Timeline a very happy and healthy 2020, and here's to some more success and more great moments for this basketball team.
What's your first resolution?
My first resolution, and I'm surprised I'm saying this, is that it is time to unleash the rookie Cam Johnson. And here's what I mean by that. First of all, Cam Johnson has really surprised me. Go back to draft night, my reaction, I was buying into the propaganda about Cam Johnson being only a shooter, about him being 38 years old and having this bum hip that would keep him out for the majority of his rookie season or his career or whatever. Now, so far, the stats don't jump off the page necessarily, but we know he's been, I think it's fair to say, Mike, like the most consistent role player on the Suns. There are very few games where Cam Johnson has struggled. There are also very few games where he's broken out. He's just kind of been this steady, roughly 10 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, and around 40% shooting from three-point range. That's what he's been doing all season. I think it's time to give him a little bit more of a role. And I don't mean that in the sense of I want Cam Johnson to now suddenly take over ball handling duties and like create his own offense. But here's kind of how I mean that. I want to talk about the distinction between coming off screens and just being a spot-up shooter, because I think it's important to where you can go forward with Cam Johnson's career. Off-screen plays are doing something, they're a little bit more involved. It's doing something like running a pin down or a flare screen or a back screen for a guy, having them come off it and then shoot. Spot-up opportunities, on the other hand, are just the natural consequence of a defense breaking down. A guy happens to get a wide-open shot, he catches, and he fires. What we're seeing right now from Cam Johnson is a ton of spot-up shooting. The natural consequence of that defense falling apart, And then Cam is the guy, and he happens to be the guy who's the best at converting those opportunities. In fact, he's converting in the 88th percentile as a spot-up shooter in the NBA. That is tremendous, tremendous efficiency. What we're not seeing from Cam so far, and what I want to see in the future, is I want to see the Suns playmakers actually looking for him more, getting him more involved, running those off-screen plays for him. And I'd like to draw like a quick comparison to a guy like JJ Redick. Because just to demonstrate what I mean here, two guys, you can have two phenomenal three-point shooters who, when you actually watch them on offense, they're doing very different things. NBA.com tracks the amount of plays that these guys are doing spot-up possessions versus off-screen possessions. A guy like Cam Johnson, close to 80% of his possessions right now 80% of all of the possessions between spot-ups and off-screens combined are spot-ups. So just to kind of explain what I mean there, like he's had almost 100 possessions of just spotting up and shooting versus only 20 where the Suns have actually ran him off an off-screen play, given him the ball. You look at a guy who is a legendary shooter like JJ Redick and how he exists in the space of the New Orleans offense. JJ Redick has only 62 spot-up opportunities this season. He has over 110 off-screen plays so far this season. He's near the top of the leaderboard. He's incredibly efficient in both of those play types, but the difference is there's an added impact offensively. There's an added gravity to it when you're willing to exert that extra effort into your offense and really make a guy a priority, the way that New Orleans does with JJ Redick and the way the Suns are currently not doing with Cam Johnson. So when I say it's time to unleash Cam Johnson, I don't mean do anything crazy. I don't mean give him, the ball 40 possessions a night. I just mean they need to start looking for him a little bit more, treating him like he really has a higher ceiling than just this kind of average role player, and maybe a guy who could grow into the next, JJ Redick or Klay Thompson or whatever, but a guy who could really be a fantastic, fantastic weapon for your offense on any given night.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think Cam has grown a lot. I think what's really interesting about Cameron Johnson so far this season is that he doesn't seem to be like an overly negative defender. He's in the right place a lot of the time. That means that he's earned a lot of minutes. And I think that's the right way to look at it. If he's not making obvious mistakes defensively, then you can keep him in the game. Do you think that he has the conditioning that it takes to do that? Because I think one of the things that's underrated for JJ Redick, a lot of people talk about, I think JJ Redick is one of those guys that's used as an example more than other players because what he does is so unique, and I think it might be a little underappreciated how unique it is at this point in his career, because not only is he doing what you said, like off screen, like you said, but it takes so much effort and it takes so much conditioning to be able to do that night after night after night after night. There's really only two guys that are constantly doing that, and I think that's Klay Thompson, who's obviously injured, but also JJ Redick. Those are really the only two guys. That's the mold, right? That's the mold that you should be looking at for Cameron Johnson. But do you think that he's capable of that this early in his career?
Maybe not initially, and I think that's a fair criticism. Maybe not initially, and right now he's playing closer to 20 minutes per game. I think he can handle it in a 20-minute per game role, and that's also sort of why I'm not saying, we know the reality of this wing rotation right now. We know Kelly Oubre is going to get his minutes. We just raved about Mikal Bridges, about how we want to get him minutes. So we know Cam's not going to play 35 minutes a game, so no one should expect him to kind of succeed in that role, playing that many minutes. But I do think he can handle it in shorter spurts for 15 to 20 minutes. Just get him a little more active in the minutes he's actually on the floor, and try to look for him a little bit more. Because, if we just look at this team right now, I think we both expected going into the season that the Suns were going to improve their shooting. They have. They're no longer the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA. But when it comes to hitting open shots, they're not that far from the cellar. I think they're 24th, 25th in the entire NBA in the percentage at which they convert wide open three-point shots, and that's a major problem. But the one guy who's been very consistent at hitting those is Cam Johnson. So the natural consequence there is that you got to find ways to open him because he's your hottest shooter.
That's right. And that means Aaron Baines can't miss him on the obvious kick-out pass to the corner.
What's up, guys? This is Andrew Leesis, and you can find me on Twitter at Harry Styles. Okay, that's a bad joke, but that man is handsome. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Leesis, and I just want to say my favorite Suns memory of the year had to have been probably the Suns' victory over the Warriors in March, when they had KD, Draymond, Klay, Steph, And we kind of saw all the pieces come together. It was Booker going off. It was Ayton making plays. Oubre was making plays. Honestly, it just felt like the era of being terrible was over for the Suns. And I think a lot of fans were like, all right, we can breathe a little bit. And it was extra sweet probably because of how many times the Warriors had beaten the Suns in a row. And then to finally get that last punch in before that, that dynasty broke up is really cool. And I think that win meant a lot to a lot of people. It meant a lot to me. So that was my favorite moment of the year. There's a lot of moments to choose from. I love the Suns community, man. But yeah, no, shout out to the Timeline Podcast, though. These guys are the best. Sam is my guy. I love him to death. But yeah, appreciate y'all having me on here, bro.
All right, my next resolution is specifically for DeAndre Ayton. Now, DeAndre Ayton, we haven't seen a lot from him this season. Unfortunately, he's only played 2 games. This is not related to that. I mean, maybe an obvious resolution is don't take any more diuretics, but I have a feeling he's not going to do that. But my DeAndre Ayton resolution is for him to roll and roll hard. And this is a very specific resolution for DeAndre Ayton, partially based on his return game that we got to see against the Los Angeles Clippers. I think that something about DeAndre Ayton and the way he screens, he's not rolling as much as he can be. And I think this was specific to that game because I think he's not used to playing with Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio was looking for him a few times. He was screening and he was trying to create some space by standing in the mid-range area, which gives somebody like Devin Booker space to get to the basket. But there's such a gravity to him that when he rolls, there still is space for the ball handler on the pick and roll. And here's some stats. Last year, DeAndre Ayton was the roll man in a pick and roll about 20% of the time. So about 21% of his offense was rolling in a pick and roll. That actually was not even in the top 40 players in the NBA as far as just frequency of rolling in the pick and roll. He was like 44, 45. Even Al Horford, somebody who shoots threes and kind of does everything, rolled 31% of the time last year. Gobert, 25% of the time. There's somebody that played with Ricky Rubio. That 21% last year was not enough for somebody like DeAndre Ayton that's so efficient on the roll, that has the hands that he does, and that attracts the gravity that he does. Because I think this is an important thing. You can't roll expecting to receive the ball every time. There's such an element of creating space and creating offense for other people that when you roll, you can't always expect to get the ball. You might attract 3 defenders on the roll and might open up somebody like Devin Booker or Cameron Johnson, like we just talked about with our last resolution. Playing with Ricky Rubio is going to make a difference for him. If he rolls and rolls hard when he sets a screen, it'll increase his efficiency, it'll raise his free throw percentage, and it can be used to get other guys open. So my resolution specifically for DeAndre Ayton is get used to rolling. Now that we have a point guard, get used to rolling and rolling hard.
Yeah, I mean, to master the art of the pick and roll is to master a diversion tactic, right? That's exactly what you're talking about. You're trying, if you're an unselfish player, you want to attract that attention because you know that it's going to create open opportunities. If you're a smart player, you know that your teammates will capitalize on those opportunities and you have a better chance to win the game. So that's the way we need DeAndre Ayton thinking. And I think even you could extend it out a little bit further, and kind of all of this comes down to we need DeAndre Ayton to think like a modern center. And so, if he wants to be more like, say, an Anthony Davis, or if he wants to be more like a Joel Embiid, which are kind of different types of dominant centers, doesn't really matter. But what those two guys have in common, they're slowly cutting out the mid-range, they're taking threes, they're dominating in the post and rolling to the basket. Focus on, and I know it's corny to say because, everyone has been kind of emphasizing the importance of these types of shots, but focus on getting as close to the rim as you can, like you said, Mike, or bringing it out to the three-point line. But the one thing we can't see from him going forward, and it's okay if he does it sometimes, but just not to the extent that we've seen, is those shitty 17-foot face-up jumpers where, he pump fakes a few times, but the defender knows it's going up because he's not going to drive to the basket.
Yeah, and another thing is screening and then just expecting everyone else to do the work. That was a big thing that he did in the Clippers game, and I think part of that was just getting used to coming back and sort of not being in the rhythm and the flow of the game and not understanding the flow of the offense. The offense slowed down with him on the court, and it's still effective when he's on the court, even if it slows down. But over time, that's not going to be the beneficial way to play with DeAndre Ayton. It has to flow, it has to move, and that means that you're moving even with no anticipation of getting the ball. And he will get the ball. That's the other thing is, with Ricky Rubio in the game, and even Devin Booker's passing improvements this year, DeAndre Ayton's going to get the ball in that role a lot of times. And, a big part of that is not being afraid of contact. When you roll, guys are hitting you. They're hitting you sometimes kind of hard. And those are big guys underneath the basket. So it could stem from his fear of contact and that we've talked about in the past. But we need him to roll. That 21% is not enough. So we're going to monitor that this season. And we'll see if it goes up this season. And I have a feeling it will because Ricky Rubio's on the team, and that makes a huge difference.
Hey guys, this is Gerald Bourguet from over at Fansided.com. And while it was hard to choose between, DeAndre Ayton's suspension, watching Luka Doncic damn near average a triple-double in his second season, or the Suns finishing with 19 wins last year, my favorite moment from 2019 was a recent one when Phoenix beat the undefeated 76ers to improve to 5-2. So far, it's been the peak of a much improved 2019-20 campaign, and even though Joel Embiid was out, it hasn't been since Goran Dragic outplayed Anthony Davis that we've heard someone be serenaded with MVP chants at Talking Stick Resort Arena and actually deserve them. The guy in question, of course, was Devin Booker, doing what he always does against the Sixers. He dropped 40 that night to become the 8th youngest player to reach 6,000 career points. And then meanwhile, Ricky Rubio finished with a near triple-double as well. Injuries would pile up soon after that, but after years of watching this team play uncompetitive basketball, that win over Philly really did feel like the promise of change in the near future.
My next resolution, put yourself in position to succeed at the point guard position post Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio, and I think, first of all, to back it up a little bit, I think the general trend you're going to see with my resolutions is that 2020 is an important year, but it's not an important year by itself. It's an important year because we're trying to set up a path beyond mediocrity. It's nice that the Suns are now a mediocre team. We can hang a banner that says the Suns started out the 2019-20 season 7-4, and now they're mediocre. But obviously that's not enough. We fans cannot get complacent to that nice feeling of maybe being a 500 team, maybe getting the 7th or 8th seed. We want to build into a contender. And so 2020 needs to really put you on the path to getting there. And so how does that relate to finding a point guard post Ricky Rubio? I think that's pretty obvious. Ricky Rubio is doing very well so far. He's having a better season even than I expected. I did not expect him to come from Utah, where he only averaged like 6 assists per game, and jump back up to 9 on the Suns. Credit to you, Mike, because I think you did expect that. But when his contract ends in a few years, he's going to be 31. If the Suns re-sign him, he'll go into that season of the first season of his second contract as a 32-year-old player. We need a sustainable long-term solution. And right now that's a problem because we don't even have a capable backup point guard, let alone a sustainable long-term solution that could potentially grow into the role next to Devin Booker. So what you have to do, you have to basically just kind of analyze all of your options and think about the future of a guy like Elie Okobo. Elie Okobo has shown flashes here. Does he have any potential as a starting point guard in the future? Probably not, but you can try to suss out if he does by giving him those opportunities in the next year and starting to make tough decisions. Same goes with Ty Jerome. It would be unreasonable to expect Ty Jerome to produce so far, but you at least need to throw him on the court a little bit, try and work him into some spot situations, and start to figure out what you have in him. The first-round pick that the Suns are going to have this year is going to be important too. This is a very, supposedly, from what the scouts are saying, it's a very weak draft class, but it's also a very point guard heavy draft class. And I do think there's some intriguing options that the Suns could potentially take somewhere in the top 15 that could help them out at point guard if you're also trying to find a future point guard that way. Or you could explore a trade. There's tons of different things you could do, but you need to be thinking about this right now because oftentimes when point guards turn 30 years old, as Ricky Rubio is about to do, the drop-off can hit you hard, and the Suns need to keep building on this momentum and pushing forward.
So I want to talk about Ricky Rubio quickly, and then I have a question for you on that note. Ricky Rubio started out this season shooting badly, and now the anticipation for Ricky Rubio is that he's going to shoot badly. So it's not a huge deal for him to be sort of bad shooting, but it was bad even for Ricky Rubio to start the season. Quietly, in the last few games, Ricky Rubio is now shooting 41% field goal percentage. Now, he's only had a few seasons of his career over 40% field goal percentage at all. This is one of the few seasons that he is. It's close to the 41.3% is what he's shooting. His highest he's ever had, which was 17-18 in Utah, was 41.8% from the field. And he is also currently shooting 31% from the three-point line, which is pretty close to his career average. So quietly, over the course of the last 10 or 15 games or so, he brought his shooting percentages back up to a more relatively normal shooting percentage. His effective field goal percentage for the season is actually the second highest of his career so far. So while he is still shooting bad, he is not shooting bad for Ricky Rubio, which is very bad. So just wanted to give that a little shout out. Something that I would have talked about on our last episode had we recorded last week, but we didn't get a chance. So I wanted to bring that up just for some context this week. Now, a question that I have for you, Sam, it's hypothetical, so it doesn't matter too much. But if the Suns could trade for D'Angelo Russell, there's a good chance that the Golden State Warriors would not want Ricky Rubio. It's safe to say that. Would you trade for D'Angelo Russell with Ricky Rubio on the roster? Now that could mean a few things. It could mean trying to start a 3-guard lineup, which
no.
No. But the other option is moving Ricky Rubio to the bench, and that means excellent point guard play throughout the entire roster, but that's a lot of money that's sort of given to 3 guards. Now, that could be good because you have a potential franchise center on a rookie deal, and that means that you could spend a little more on guards, but it could be considered bad. So obviously hypothetical, but this is something that there's a chance that D'Angelo Russell becomes available. I don't think it will be this year. I think that the likely scenario is that it's going to be this summer. What do you think about that idea?
I think you could at least explore facilitating it with a 3-way trade. I'd be very wary of any sort of repeat of the 3-point guard lineup, whether one of them is coming off the bench or not. Because if you remember, the Suns, when they had Bledsoe, Dragic, and IT, they only played that minute. They only played the 3 of them together, maybe a few minutes per game at most. And people kind of blew it out of proportion, but what still killed it in the end is so many combinations where it was 2 of them at the same time, and someone was playing shooting guard who didn't want to. And I think it would be a similar situation with these 3. So I don't know if you could make it work, man. That's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. I do want to give a little shout out to D'Angelo Russell just real quick. He's playing really, really well for the Golden State Warriors so far. And I do want to just point out that his off-ball play has gotten much, much better. The Warriors, for as difficult of a season that they have had so far, actually still have a lot of point guards on their roster that they play. And that means that D'Angelo Russell oftentimes is not actually playing the point guard role. He's 6'5". He's playing off the ball a lot. And I think that the way that he's developed, and no surprise to us, obviously I've been talking about D'Angelo Russell for a freaking year at this point, but the development in his game is such that he would fit perfectly, even next to somebody like Ricky Rubio, but specifically someone like Devin Booker, one of his close friends. Now, the defense, of course, would be awful, but it's just something to keep an eye on. I think the Suns have to. I think here's the main thing, Sam. At some point, either you have all 3 of Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, and D'Angelo Russell, or you have none of those 3 guys, because their plan is to play together.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
I mean, they're going to all be free agents, They're going to all be free agents at the same time.
We'll see.
Yeah.
To bring it back to the whole trade thing, I think, and it sucks because I can't think of a name that fits this situation in 2019. But what the Suns really need is a repeat of the Eric Bledsoe trade in 2013. Kind of the thing that kick-started their rebuild under the McDonough era in the first place. Like, you need to find a guy. There are A-list prospects, there are B-list prospects, and then there's throw-ins. And what the Suns have right now, the value that their backup point guards have, Javon Carter, Elliot Kobo, Ty Jerome, these are not guys who are valued to have any sort of high ceiling. Eric Bledsoe in 2013 was kind of stuck in this situation where he wasn't an A-list prospect. He was a late first-round pick, but he had obviously shown some potential behind Chris Paul, and they were willing to move him because he looked like a guy who maybe had starter potential, and the Suns were willing to jump on that. They need to find an equivalent of that in 2019, and I don't know who it is, but it's just got to be someone who's going to be okay with taking a backup role, maybe for a year or two, with the idea that you can groom them a little more easily than you can groom these other guys. The exception to the rule is if, like, I don't know, if Ellie blows up suddenly in his second year, which is totally feasible, then I guess he becomes that guy. But otherwise, you kind of need to bring it in from the outside.
Ever see an untucked button down? They look bad. Why? Because they weren't meant to be worn that way. Thankfully, there's Untuck It, the original button-down shirt actually designed to be worn untucked. No matter your size or shape, Untuck It shirts always fall at the perfect length untucked. Nothing looks worse than a shirt that does not fit. It doesn't matter what you look like otherwise. If your clothes don't fit, it's going to look bad. Actually, here's an interesting anecdote. On Seinfeld, they used to give the actor that plays George Costanza clothes that were too small to make him look dumb. It proves that you have to wear clothes that fit to look professional. Find clothes that fit. With more than 50 plus fit combinations, Untuck It shirts look great on tall, short, slim, or athletic guys of all ages. You can find your favorite Untuck It style online or check out one of their 80 brick and mortar stores. Choose from styles like wrinkle-free button-downs, super soft flannels, outerwear, and more. With Untuck It, your shirts will never look baggy, bulgy, too long, or too big again. And their website is easy to use. They even have the whole page devoted to helping you find your fit. So whether you're shopping for the perfect holiday gift or just trying to craft smart, relaxed style of your own, Untuck It is the way to go. Visit untuckit.com and use the code BLUE for 20% off at checkout. That's untuckit.com and promo code BLUE for 20% off.
Hey guys, and Kellen Olson checking in here with my favorite Suns moment of the year. I know a lot of people are going to interpret this differently, fans. There are a lot of highs this year, despite the way the Suns season has gone last season and this season during the year. But for me, and this won't surprise a lot of people who know me, I'm going to pick the weirdest and most bizarre game of the year, which was on March 25th in Utah, when Jimmer Fredette just got completely lost in the sauce of having an NBA moment again. Fans were cheering for him as he checked in the game. He shot 1 for 10 and was really just desperate to kind of get it going back to the way he used to. I mean, back in BYU, he never really got it going in the NBA, right? But he missed 6 straight shots in the fourth quarter, all while Devin Booker had 59 points. He just completely failed to realize where he was, what was going on. It was so strange, and I absolutely adored every second of it because I'm just never going to see anything like that, and I think a lot of people listening will agree. And what was that? I still can't really figure out what that was, and isn't that kind of describing Suns basketball lately in a way? So that's my pick for my favorite moment of the year. Thanks to Mike and Sam as always.
Okay, my next resolution, it's actually related a little bit to the conversation that we just talked about. This is one I didn't tell you about, Sam. It is shop the pick. Shop the pick. Shop the 2020 first round pick. Now, this could mean a lot of things, but I just want to read a quote. You touched on this a little bit when you were talking about your last resolution, Sam. This is a quote from The Athletic. This is a Sam Vecenie article. He said, "This is not a normal top of the draft. To help put things in perspective, I also asked a few people where they thought these players would be taken within the context of the last 3 drafts. Across the board, evaluators said that none of Wiseman, Edwards, Ball, or Anthony would have been taken over Zion Williamson, John Morant, DeAndre Ayton, Luka Doncic, Marvin Bagley, Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, or Jason Tatum. And they said that the top picks are more likely in the same ballpark as, wait for it, RJ Barrett, one of our favorite players in the last draft class. And that means it's an interesting thing. trading picks is actually kind of difficult. If you trade before the lottery, the idea of it could be anything is pretty valuable. If you trade after the lottery, where your pick falls dictates the value of that pick, which could be good, right? If it falls high enough and you're planning on trading it, you can get a lot of value for it. If it falls lower than you expected or lower than you anticipated, then the value tanks at that point. That means that you can capitalize on a pick right now, because capitalizing on the unknown is a common thing in the NBA. You can capitalize on a general manager going, it could be anything. We can get Ball. We can potentially get Wiseman, who's a center, right? The Suns don't want Wiseman. What are we going to do with him? At this point, it's projected that the Suns are going to be in the lottery. There is a chance. You actually wrote about it, Sam. There is a chance that the Suns can make the playoffs, or we've talked about it. But it's a difficult thing at this point. It's a difficult prospect after.
Did I write about that?
Did you? No, maybe I read somebody else's. All you Brightside guys are all the same.
Yeah, it's true.
No, so here's the thing. If you're going to trade this pick, it's got to be for someone that makes it worthwhile. Now, you talked about a trade that is similar to the Eric Bledsoe trade. That's going to be hard. Here's one guy, Drew Holiday, might be available. The Pelicans have been pretty bad. Drew Holiday would make a massive difference on this team. There's a similar problem, right? Ricky Rubio is still on the team.
I don't care. You know what? If it's for Drew Holiday, this team needs defense and playmaking.
And athleticism. Yes, exactly. Drew can guard 1, 2, and 3. That means that you can play him with both of those guys if you want to. It would be interesting. That would be someone that is worth trading the pick for. This should be star shopping. You have to look for ceiling raisers. We talked about raising the floor. The floor has been raised. Now you raise the ceiling. You have to raise the ceiling. Trading the pick is a scary thought, but if this draft class is not, there's obviously, everyone's wrong every year about the draft, for the record. There's always going to be someone that will stand out, but the chances that the Suns are going to pick the player that stands out are not any lower than any other team, other than the ones that have like an inherent scouting advantage, like the Spurs have had in the past.
I do point out that every time there's a disastrously bad draft class, there is going to be that guy, who's going to be the next Giannis that gets picked like 17th overall out of this draft. Right. It's going to be someone.
There absolutely will be. But that's the thing is the value is high now for a pick, and part of that is the Suns are currently in the running for the number 1 overall pick. And if this class is RJ Barrett level, they're not looking for that. I know that the Suns are not looking for someone like RJ Barrett that's going to take 3 years to be a good NBA player and maybe never will be. They want people that can contribute right now to winning, because their fear is pissing off Devin Booker and him asking to be moved to another team. Now is the time that they should be shopping that pick. It's difficult. We've talked about Karl Anthony Towns in the past. The Wolves are worse than they've ever been before. Right now, they've lost some insane amount of games in a row. Maybe they won one recently and I missed it, but it was up to like 11 games in a row. That's the guy, right? If you can get Karl Anthony Towns, you should target Karl Anthony Towns. But they're not going to. I don't believe they're going to trade him this year unless he absolutely.
And furthermore, if it's such a bad class, it deflates the pick.
Yeah,
it deflates the value of that pick. You can't get Karl Anthony Towns for the 10th overall pick in a terrible draft.
Well, you got a number 1 overall pick on the roster right now, so that helps a little bit.
So you would trade, if you went after Cat, you would have to trade Ayton,
and probably then, 2 picks. It'd probably have to be this pick and then 2 years from now.
Let's be honest, dude. Karl Anthony Towns right now is a top 10 player in the NBA. I think his stock has risen. There was this a weird period of time last year where everyone was all on the Joel Embiid train and Cat looked like a bum, at least, based on the narratives, not in reality. But right now, what's Cat's value? They're going to want Ayton. They're going to want that first-round pick. They're going to want another first-round pick.
And probably Oubre.
Probably Oubre or Mikal Bridges. Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think that they would, and I still would do it. I just think it's really difficult.
So would I.
It's getting a star to pair with Devin Booker, a real star, and it could be Ayton. I'm not discounting that possibility happening in the future, but that's going to be the most important thing for this team actually making noise in the playoffs in the future. So there's the thing. Shop the pick. Maybe you get somebody good, maybe you don't, but don't cherish it. Make it available if something becomes available on the trade market.
Hey guys, it's Tizdu from Reddit. Wanted to say a big part of my son's memories this year was actually your guys' podcast. Wanted to say you guys both have a professionalism and knowledge of the game, and it really shines through. So thank you very much for working so hard on your podcast. I always really enjoy it. As far as son's memories for me go, I'm really just excited about the direction the team is going in general. We dropped a lot of dead weight guys in the offseason, some guys that weren't developing, some low character guys, and it seems like we have at least a different identity now. It's a positive, character-filled, high IQ mindset team now, and I'm excited about it. Season's looking a little dismal at the moment, but I see really good things for the second half of the season. I think we're going to turn some heads and have a lot of fun. So Happy New Year, guys, and take care.
So what's your next one, Sam?
My next resolution it's kind of related to what you were talking about a little while ago, but figure out exactly what you have in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. The most disappointing thing I think this season has been, again, we're trying to build not just in 2020 but beyond. And so you really need to figure out exactly what your number one and your number two star are capable of, sort out the synergy that they have between each other. And it's a massive problem that we've only seen them together for one game this season, so we really don't know what we have. We just need, in 2020, a bigger sample size of those minutes with those two guys together on the floor, so we can see how that offense with other capable pieces, other capable NBA players, which they didn't have last year, what that looks like. And with DeAndre Ayton specifically, like we already talked about how he wants to roll, or how he needs to roll, but I want to see how much can his shot and how much can his playmaking really be developed this year. Because we know he's a great pick-and-roll finisher, we know he's a great post-up player, but to be a second option on a contender, that stuff is just not enough. I want to be able to dump it into DeAndre Ayton at the elbow and actually have him drive and force opposing defenses into foul trouble so that then from that point on, everyone on the team can attack. You know, I want DeAndre Ayton to step out to the three and take that shot a couple of times a game. I want him to reach the same levels of playmaking from the elbow position that we've seen from bigs like Aaron Baines and Frank Kaminsky inside this Monty Williams 0.5 offense. I want to run lineups beyond that of just DeAndre Ayton and no Devin Booker and be able to see, like, put some pressure on Ayton offensively and see, can he handle the load of really running an offense by himself for long stretches of minutes to bring some relief to Devin Booker, and is he really capable of ascending into that number two star type of position? So basically, I want to see development out of DeAndre Ayton. I just want to see him play. Because we need to figure out exactly what his potential is going forward as our entire future rests on it.
Yeah, it's vital. It's absolutely vital that he improves on the defensive end. If he can show what he did at the beginning of the year, obviously that's important. And, you know, more than anything else, just not playing one game at a time. It'd be nice for him to play a few games in a row because I think it's a little unfair. It's hard to criticize the Clippers game specifically because he was okay, right? He wasn't attacking. He settled for the mid-range. His defense was all right. I posted a lot of clips of it online. There were times where he was good defensively. There was times where he was okay. There was a few bad mistakes, but not a lot. And, you know, kind of like he was at the end of last season. It's just hard to even evaluate him in any way. And that's something that we need James Jones to do right now. Like right now. That's important for the future of this team and Monty Williams as well, because they need to know what to work with him on. And there's no real way to do that in practice. You got to see him in real games. So I think I agree with that. Play some games is really what we want to see, right?
Play some fucking games. Let's go. 2020 resolution, play some games.
Hey, Mike and Sam, this is Max Hodder. I hope you're having a good Chrissy and you have a good New Year. For my favourite moment of 2019, it was kind of difficult to come up with something, considering it's been not been the greatest year as a Suns fan. But my favourite moment would have to be the game against the Warriors at the Oracle to end last season. And the specific moment that comes to mind is the Kelly Oubre transition pull-up three. He was 1 against 4 of the Golden State defenders. I think we were up about 10 at the time. And I was kind of just saying, pull it out, slow it down, and Kelly just pulled up from 3 and just drained it. And I remember going berserk because it was such a good, fun win against such a good team, obviously. So yeah, that would be my favourite moment of 2019. Have a good one, boys.
All right, my next one is another potentially trade-related one. Look for potential guards to come off the bench. This is an ongoing conversation. We don't have to spend too long on this one. But the Suns need offense, and they specifically need offense off the bench. Now, they need defense in general, but I think a lot of that has to do with focus. They're not focusing a lot on the defensive end. But offensively, there are times where when Devin Booker is not on the floor, things are not happening. They just are not happening. And there will be some guys available, I think, in this trade market. And some of those guys are JJ Redick. I talked about it. Satoransky, I talked a little bit about in the past as well. Some more names I want to throw out there. What do you think about this one, Sam? Derrick Rose. If Derrick Rose becomes available as a backup point guard, he's making.
Wow.
I know. He's making almost nothing. And he's been okay, right? He's been better than any point guard that we've had on better than any backup point guard that we have on this team so far. A big part is that he's making nothing, and the Pistons are awful. So he's averaging 16.7 points per game, 5.9 assists, and his shooting splits are very good. 49% from the field, 32% from 3. Not great, but he's he's back to that sort of attacking guy that he was in the past. And I think he could be gotten for potentially not much. And I have a feeling that he's going to end up on a team like the Lakers or like the Bucks or something.
Yeah,
a contender. But what do you think about Derrick Rose?
I kind of like that, actually, but Detroit's a funny one. Are they going to blow it up finally?
Yeah,
because it kind of depends. If Derrick Rose is going to be moved, I think it would be an indication that they're greater sellers. Like, they're going to be selling off more than just Derrick Rose at the deadline.
And
they should, and I think
I
people
have
have been saying
resolution related to that later, but they should. They absolutely should, because they're not good. They've been really bad. Even Eastern Conference wise, they've been really bad. It's not even just it's bad. It's a bad situation there in Detroit, and they got to figure it out. And through that, there have been some good players, and Derrick Rose is one of those.
Sort of salary could we match for Derrick Rose? He makes $7 million. I'm struggling to think of a player on.
Do they want
roster.
Frank Kaminsky?
Frank Kaminsky, who makes like 5, right?
Yeah.
Could throw in Markieff Morris while we're at it.
Oh God, no thanks.
Or just
good,
swap.
Though.
What about just swapping? No, you're gonna hate this idea. Mm-hmm. This is I don't even know what's going on with Reggie Jackson. Is he injured?
I don't know. Is he not playing?
He's only played 2. This should show you how much I know about Detroit Pistons basketball at the moment. When Reggie Jackson apparently has only played 2 games this season. But I was going to say you could swap his contract with Tyler Johnson. I guess that's kind of off the table now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is Reggie Jackson a free agent after this year? I don't think he is. I think he has next year on the books as well. I think I've looked at this recently.
Reggie Jackson sucks. No, he is a free agent after this year. So he and Tyler Johnson can both hit free agency and struggle to get their next NBA contract.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't like him. So no,
Reggie has been a very unlikable character in the NBA for a long time, I think.
Yeah.
Like, he's been on Detroit for years. I don't know if any fan base that's ever had him, either OKC or Detroit, has ever liked Reggie Jackson. The Reggie Jackson experience is an interesting one, because he's kind of like I'm trying to think. For a long time, I'm not like a huge NFL fan, but I know for a long time in the NFL there was like the Andy Dalton line of like, this is the player where if you have a better quarterback than Andy Dalton, then you have like at least a capable starting quarterback, and if it's worse, then you really have problems. And I think Reggie Jackson, at least for a time 2 or 3 years ago, was kind of approaching that line where he was like the 20th best point guard in the NBA. If you have a worse starting point guard than Reggie Jackson, you're fucked. If you have a better one, that's where you actually need to be to make the playoffs. He was just kind of destined to be the point guard for a lottery team. But now his play has collapsed altogether, and he's not a fun one.
And he's had some injuries, but I think a big part with Reggie Jackson is that for what he gives you on the court, the distraction that he is off the court is not really worthwhile. But my resolution, more than anything else, look, we never know what's going to be available. And those are just some options of guys that will potentially become available. So grab one of those guys, James Jones, if you can, especially if it doesn't cost too much. Maybe Derrick Rose wouldn't cost too much, although we'll see. You know, the Lakers might be willing to give up a first-round pick for him. They don't seem to value those anymore. So, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Alessandro, and my favorite Suns moment this year was the Rubio signing. A few hours before the actual news dropped, I was discussing with other people on Twitter, and I laughed at a guy completely dismissing the possibility of Rubio signing with the Suns, both because he was going to make too much, or at least I thought so, and because he was supposed to be an Indiana Pacer. But after we got the news, I got owned on Twitter, and so it was a pretty fun moment, both because we finally got our point guard, and also because I got owned on Twitter and people laughed at me for like a couple of hours.
What's your next resolution, Sam?
Mike, work on locating the number 3. We talked about Booker. We talked about Ayton. But good things come in threes. You know, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, that's 3. Pierce, Garnett, and Ray Allen, that's 3. There's only 3 good Suns podcasts. I'm not going to mention which they are. You have to figure out for yourself listening at home. But work on locating that number 3 and I'll turn it around on you. Is Kelly Oubre the number 3? Could he be the number 3?
Wait, did you include us in the 3 good podcasts?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
That's for the listeners to decide.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I think there are times, Kelly Oubre is an interesting guy where there are times where you can see it. We talked about the Clippers game. There are times when you can see it and you can kind of envision it. You can kind of picture it. And then there are times where he's just, he's a negative on the court, regardless of his, diving into 5 defenders underneath the basket, letting guys back cut him over and over and over again, things like that. So, I think that if he can get that sort of mental side of the game correct, I can see it. He's definitely athletic enough, right? He's the most athletic player on the team. And the shooting has not been bad. His shooting has improved. So, but no, here's the reality of it. If we're talking about a contender, like a playoff contender, no, he's more of a 4th guy.
Okay, so then I guess the next question that naturally stems from that is, are you willing to kind of give up on Kelly Oubre and like package him with other pieces if you could go out and get a legit number 3?
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
Is that what you need to prioritize? Like if it took... well, this is hard because Dario is a free agent, right? But I was going to say that because then it would have to be some sort of sign-in trade. But I was going to say if you could package together Dario and Kelly somehow, or Kelly and Mikal, or these players that obviously Suns fans cherish, but at the end of the day are just role players, and maybe they'll always be role players. We don't really know. To go out and get the guy who's going to be a reserve all-star, averaging 20 points per game, and is going to be the number 3 to kind of tuck into that rotation. Is that worth it? I think you do have to prioritize that. And I personally am rooting for Kelly Oubre. I hope he's the guy. I'd like to see a little bit more improvement out of him. And I think he's so close to attaining that level where he is a 20-point per game, 6 rebound a game guy who's like not reserve all-star levels in the Western Conference because the Western Conference is so tough, but in the Eastern Conference maybe would be a reserve all-star and is maybe a legit number 3 option. The 3-point shooting for him really needs to come along. He's still only shooting 32% from deep this season. I know it's like not what he's expected to do, but it just really hurts to see some of these games where the Suns as a collective unit can't hit wide open shots, and Kelly is definitely contributing to that.
Would you trade Kelly Oubre for Drew Holiday if that's what it took?
Yes, and look, I'm not, because there's raw stats. Both of these guys average 20 points per game. But defensively, it is not a question of who's a more impactful player. Drew Holiday is such an impactful player, one of the most impactful defenders in the NBA. And that's really something the Suns are lacking right now. So, of course, it depends what you would have to give up. But if you could package a player like Drew Holiday and put him with Devin Booker, and now I'm even thinking like if you could run Drew Holiday at the 1 and Devin Booker at the 2 and Mikal Bridges at the 3, that's an amazing combination, and still have DeAndre Ayton somehow. I don't know if you'd be able to do that, but that would be really, really good.
Yeah, it would.
I love Kelly Oubre. And, Kelly Oubre changed the culture in Phoenix. That is a fact. The Valley Boys thing changed the culture in Phoenix. And it put this team on the map in a way that they haven't been on the map in half a decade. And that matters. And the fans are very loyal to Kelly, as they should be. So, don't interpret this, if you're listening, as I'm trying to trade Kelly Oubre. But from a long-term team-building, sustainable kind of standpoint, the Suns do need a number 3 behind Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. So just ask yourself, do you think Kelly Oubre can be that guy?
We're not trying to trade anyone on this podcast.
I know some people think if you criticize,
you can't even
DeAndre
mention
Ayton
it,
once,
right? You can't even mention it sometimes. But we entertain all options. We do this every week, guys. We have to talk about something, and and that means we entertain all options here. I think that it's an interesting thing. I think for the specific Kelly Oubre conversation, there's no reason to shop him at this trade deadline unless you get somebody really, really great. And there's probably not going to be a lot of really, really great players available in this trade season here coming up in the next month or two. So, and the trade deadline's earlier this year. Do you happen to know that off the top of your head, Sam?
I don't. Sorry. I can look it up.
I know it used to be around Valentine's Day, but I think it's before that this year. So there's not a lot of time. That means some moves are going to go down relatively soon. So it looks like February 6th. There it is. Yeah. Google finding it for us. So it's going to be an interesting time, and I don't think Kelly Oubre is going to be available. But I think in the offseason, when you're just looking at all avenues to improve, I don't think that he's one of those guys that is just off the table entirely. You just have to sort of look at what's available.
Here's the other thing to quickly entertain the idea of. Are we overlooking someone on the roster that could be the number 3? Could Cam Johnson be that guy one day?
It's interesting.
Could Dario have a surprise, 5th-year blow-up? It seems very... I kind of just laughed that one off. Yeah, it seems very unlikely, right? But I figured I would throw it out there. If Cam Johnson actually became a 20-point-per-game sniper... that's probably still not enough because of what he does on defense, right?
He's a role player. He's a role player. He's a very high-level role player.
As much as we want him to be Clay, his defense is not Clay. His defense is better
and his ball
than it was advertised.
His athleticism in general. Clay, like I said, these guys like Klay Thompson and JJ Redick, there's so much of what they do that's undervalued, and Cam Johnson can do a lot of those things. That's a huge thing. But I think he's more of a high-level role player. He's definitely the type of player that exists on a contender. But those guys are usually not the third best player. They're usually the fourth or fifth. They're even a lot of times coming off the bench, more of a Kyle Korver as an example, or a James Jones as an example.
Yep.
So, yeah.
This is Cody Hunt. I'm the guy with the video of my really ugly but accurate jump shot on Twitter. My favorite Suns moment of the year was that 2-game stretch in March where the Suns beat the Lakers and then the Bucks back-to-back. Not only was it great to beat 2 solid teams, but especially I was so happy that DeAndre Ayton had huge defensive moments down the stretches of those games against LeBron, against the Lakers, and then Giannis against the Bucks. That was part of a stretch where the Suns won 4 out of 6 games, and it was really where I started to believe that a team built around Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton could be a winner. That was my favorite Suns moment of the year.
All right, my next one. It's my turn, right? Yeah. Okay. So we've been talking a lot about trades. The trade season is upon us. My last resolution that I'm going to go over here: stay away from Blake Griffin. We briefly touched on how bad
this one hurts, man.
How bad the Detroit Pistons are. We haven't, Sam. You and I haven't talked about Blake Griffin in a while. We talked about him at the beginning of the year a little bit as a guy that you could potentially target because, I mean, if you just looked at the East, you could kind of predict that Detroit wasn't going to be good. But what you could not predict was that he's currently averaging a career low, including his rookie year, in points, rebounds, and field goal percentage. He's only averaging 15 points a game. He can barely stay on the court. He's missed games. He's only played 18 of their 33 games. And he's making $34 million this year, $36 million the next year, and $38 million the year after that. Blake Griffin is not the player that he once was. Now, you could say, well, he's a guy that relied a lot on his athleticism. That athleticism's going away. That happened last year, and he was good last year. There's a chance that he can bounce back from this.
Mm-hmm.
But what he's shown so far is that he's not worth giving up assets for, and he's not worth what he's going to be paid and what he's currently being paid.
But in a way, isn't that the best part?
Well, it makes him available for less.
Right. I mean, if it means that you can package together, wow, what the fuck is he making? $35 million?
34, almost 35.
So what you would have to do, I don't even know, you would have to trade.
That's literally the salary of Tyler Johnson and Kelly Oubre combined.
Yes, so you would have to trade Tyler Johnson and Kelly Oubre, or Tyler Johnson and Ricky Rubio, which doesn't make any sense. That's the only way to facilitate the trade.
Right.
And at that point, you wouldn't throw in anything else. It would just kind of be like salary relief for Detroit.
Yeah.
But if I don't believe that Blake Griffin is going back to his 25 point per game, 8 rebound, all-star starter self. I don't believe he's this bad either. And so if you could get him into a happy medium of a 20 point per game guy, theoretically, yes, he makes a lot of money. Yes, he has an injury history. Yes, he just turned 30 years old. Isn't that kind of the number 3 we were just talking about?
Yes, in theory. In reality, he's a below average player currently.
Oh, he absolutely is right now. But I guess and it's not because I necessarily disagree with you, but I just want to hear us talk through it. About a month ago when we talked about Lauri Markkanen and you talked about Chicago's system and kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, of like Phoenix could bring him in and could coax him into being a better player and kind of nourish him. Why are you not doing this?
Potential. He's young.
Why are you not doing the same thing with Blake? Just because he's young?
It's a huge part of it. With the things that Blake Griffin were the best at were all sort of related to his athleticism. They really were. And as that goes away, a lot of his game is suffers. Now, he got up to like a 36% 3-point shooter last season on quite a few attempts. He took 522 3-point attempts last season. So he shot. Like, it's not like he was just kind of hitting them in spot up situations.
He also played 75 games.
He played 75 games, and that was one of the best seasons of his career last season. So this season though, if you look at the differences, 35% from the field, 24% from the 3-point line. That's really bad. That's really an effective field goal percentage of 40%. That's very low for a guy like Blake Griffin, who should be doing a lot more. Could Blake Griffin be better on the Suns? Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of guys that will give him extra space. I think that he can find his way in being maybe the second or potentially third best player on the team, rather than having sort of the weight of the world on his shoulders in Detroit. But the money, if he continues on this downward trajectory and he's making $38 million a year in his last year of his career, and Devin Booker's 25 years old, I'm just not sure I want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like a parallel to Amari, right?
Yeah.
Amari,
it happens fast.
Season. Exactly. And I was going to say, you were talking about Blake's last season. It reminded me, because I was in New York. I'm from New York. Amari's first season in New York was spectacular. And he went on this franchise record streak of games of scoring 30 or more points. At one point, he passed Patrick Ewing. And he was the talk of the town the first half of that season. He was being hailed as an MVP candidate. And then, you could blame it on various factors. It was a combination of losing athleticism. It was a combination of the Knicks bringing in Carmelo Anthony that kind of lessened his role in the team. But the decline came fast for Amari. The next year he was okay. And 2 or 3 years after that, when he was still making like $25 million, which at the time under that CBA was a lot of money, he was disastrously bad.
Yep.
So maybe the same thing is happening to Blake right now. Or maybe this is a little bit regression too far in the other direction, and he's going to bounce back to somewhere in the middle. And if the Suns don't trade for him, they're missing out. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sticking with my resolution. Stay away. It's not worth the risk at this point. At this point, Kelly Oubre is a better player than Blake Griffin. And that's a weird thing to say, but it's true. It's true right now. So that's tough to hear. But my resolution, stay away from Blake Griffin. What's your last resolution, Sam?
My last resolution for the Phoenix Suns, and this is an overall organizational goal. Everyone needs to buy into this in order for it to work, and that is no shenanigans. Not a single shenanigan. We have the new leadership now with the Phoenix Suns, with a GM that supposedly players can trust because it comes from that perspective of James Jones having been a player himself. They have a new coach locked into the longest deal in team history, with Robert Sarver finally doling out that 5-year contract. They have a state-of-the-art practice facility that should be ready for 2021 to use as a persuasion tool for incoming free agents. And supposedly for now, they even have good on-court chemistry with each other. You know, we haven't heard any players complaining about each other, complaining about coaches, things like that. That's all very good for now. I just want the entire team to keep it up. I don't want to see any hit pieces about goat shit. I don't want to see players complaining about each other. I don't want to see them bad-mouthing Monty Williams. And the reason this is important is because, like, the Suns aren't that good yet, you know? They're maybe on pace for being a 30-win team this year. We have to accept that that's a possibility. I'm hoping DeAndre Ayton comes back, they get their shit together, they finish closer to 500. But there is a possibility, based on the way that they've played in the past month, that they're still a pretty bad team. So win or lose, this organization has to come together. They have to right the ship because they have a reputation to maintain. And it is paramount to maintain the image that the Phoenix Suns are a changed organization. Because again, the overall theme, the overarching theme of all of my resolutions is that it's not just about 2020 for 2020's sake. It's about building something for the future. So if you focus on linear improvement, getting that improvement, generating momentum, and then continuing to build off it, that you can point to and say, we are a respectable organization now that doesn't have any chaos. Then maybe you can go out and start to recruit free agents with your fancy new practice facility in 2021. Maybe you can recruit better assistant coaches, better training staff, pluck various respected people from around the NBA for this position or that position, and really start to build the type of organization that James Jones has been talking about building, but that we haven't seen yet. But kind of, for right now, no shenanigans, and I say that because you kind of got to fake it until you make it. The Suns haven't made it yet, but they need to act like they've made it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to that. Here's to a shenanigan-free 2020. Raise your glass, everyone listening to this podcast, and there you go. And have a happy new year, everyone that listened. I fully buy into that. That's an excellent way to end this episode, Sam. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to everyone listening to this podcast. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this podcast as well. Big shout out to everyone. I'll shout you guys out on Twitter as well. Happy New Year to all the Suns fans, and we'll be back next week. I think that I want to talk about just some options that we didn't talk about. Maybe Kelly Oubre a little bit more, maybe a little bit more Devin Booker talk, because we somehow didn't have a single Devin Booker related resolution. So we'll get to that next week.
We'll be back with all the normal stuff next week.
In
Player of the
2020
Week segment, all that stuff. In 2020. Don't make a joke about it. But Happy New Year's, guys.
Let's have a real question by a real journalist here. Yeah, go ahead. By a real journalist here. Let's have a real question by a real journalist here. Yeah, go ahead. By a real journalist here.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.